Good morning to the participants who have joined. Good morning to you, Dr. Gabriel, and good morning to all the colleagues. Thank you for joining the session and welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit. My name is Lawrence, and I will be your moderator for today's workshop. I've seen due to the low attendance, Dr. Gabriel will also try and make this a very interactive session so that we can also just address, what are some of the issues that the participants who have joined here actually have, in terms of proposal writing. Then Dr. Gabriel will be able to address some of those issues since he is our facilitator. So I'd like to thank the attendees for taking the time to join, and most importantly, our presenter, Dr. Gabriel. And to the participants that have joined, feel free to raise your hand if you do have any question. And please let's make this a very interactive session. And I'll also ensure that the session is recorded as I've indicated, and we will send you also the presentation slides of Dr. Gabriel, and I'll also be sending out a feedback survey in the chat session. Please allow me to read Dr. Gabriel's bio before we can proceed with the session. Dr. Gabriel Morinera holds a PhD in Economic and Management Sciences with International Trade from the Northwest University and is currently enrolled in the Postgraduate Diploma in Research Supervision at the University of Johannesburg. With over a decade of teaching experience and a strong publication record, he has authored and co-authored book chapters and a number of articles in top-tier accredited peer-reviewed journals. He actively reviews for reputable journals, and he has received multiple awards for academic excellence. Dr. Moniera completed his postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg and currently serves as a research capacity development specialist at the UJ Postgraduate School, supporting postgraduate students and researchers in academic writing and publication. His research interests include trade policy, export promotion, globalization, foreign trade and investment, regional and integration in Africa, market accessibility, measurement, and 4IR trade-related research. Without any further ado, I will be handing over to Dr. Gabriel. You may begin the session. Thank you.
Lawrence, thank you so much for the introduction. I just want a confirmation from the colleagues and also from the participants that you can hear me and you can see this video. The slides that I'm going to share with you, if you can see the video that has been shared with Lawrence, then I'm sure you will be able to also see these slides that I'm sharing with you. Just confirm if you can see it. Okay, I see a confirmation from Lauren. Thank you so much for the confirmation, and once again, we welcome you to the workshop for today. We only, for this workshop, we want it to be as much interactive as possible. So whenever you feel like you have a question that you need to ask me, you can just stop me and ask the question. So the workshop is on proposal writing and submission procedures, sort of generic submission procedures for the JBS. Right. So I also just termed it, gave another sub theme where I just said these are sort of tips and guidelines that you can use when you're writing a proposal. So we'll begin by understanding what a proposal is, go through what we call the reading process. Remember, you don't just start by writing. Writing is something that you have to plan for. And the planning also includes a process of reading, where, during the conceptualization of the topic itself. So there's a lot of planning that goes in before you even start writing. Then we look at the structure of the proposal, what happens after you have written, then also the issue of submission. How do you possibly, like submit your proposal according to the departmental guidelines as well as the faculty guidelines. Then I will just offer a bit of conclusion and recommendations before opening the floor for what we call an open discussion, where we can just share. It could be experiences, or if you have questions, or if you want to also contribute to the conversation that we are having today. Okay, so what is it that we call a proposal? So we have seen that it is usually the norm that before you start writing your dissertation or your thesis, um, at postgraduate level, you may be asked to write a proposal for that particular study that you want to do. What is the purpose of that? It's for one to be able to provide a snapshot of what your research involves. Okay, so in other words, given the financial, factors as well as time factors, that goes into research, there is a need for what you want to look at to be sort of evaluated in terms of its feasibility, as well as other essential aspects that relates to whether can really that be done, can it be completed within the set time frames and so on. And remember, we don't research just because we want to research, but we research because there is a problem that exists within the society that we want to provide a solution to, or that we want to resolve. So when you have submitted a proposal, in most cases, a supervisor will be assigned who has expertise in your field. So, sometimes we will submit the proposal whilst we already have a supervisor that we know that, okay, this is the supervisor who is going to supervise my study. You would have approached the supervisor before. Normally, when you're doing honors, when you do those honors research reports, the supervisor that you work with, mostly you go on to continue maybe having established working relations already with the supervisor. You continue to work with that supervisor going forth. So, but you would have not yet identified a supervisor, but you just submit a proposal. That also happens from those who are coming from other institutions who do not have any sort of form of relations that are already established with the academic staff here at the UJ. So their proposals are also received. After they've sort of submitted them, they are received. Upon the receipt, then a supervisor can be allocated in terms of those who are having expertise amongst the pool of staff, academic staff members, who are at that level of being able to supervise students. Then you should also, the intention is that after your proposal has been reviewed, you get a feedback on the viability of the topic, how to focus the scope, the research methods, and other issues you should consider before progressing in your research. Remember, the whole exercise is aimed at evaluating whether everything is it working. Right. So the research proposal should present the research topic, justify your reasons for choosing it, and outline how you are going to research it. So this is very important in terms of, what is the problem currently under study. How is it important? Why should we care about what you are doing? Is it really a problem? So it has to be convincing to the reader, or to whoever is encountering your research, that indeed this is a problem that exists, that necessitates to be resolved through research. You also need to, this is before you start writing. You need to go into a process of reading. You have to read a lot, but reading does not mean that you just have to read anything that your come across, but you have to read a lot of relevant information. You have to be targeted and focus on what you really need to know. So don't go all over, the show and read everything that you just come across. But it should be a sort of a targeted and a more focused approach that you must follow. So instead of reading every page in every book, you look for clues in chapter titles and introductions to narrow your focus. So this is also, I think I had a presentation previously where I, presented on how do you, when you are reading, how do you choose that this is the correct article? How do you go about that process? Do you go on the internet, download everything, or, print it in printed form? Then you have hard copies, you start marking the hard copies and so on, then deciding whether this works, it doesn't, you throw it in the dustbin. What do you really do when you do that? So I had a presentation where I shared some tips of how do you identify that this is an article that is applicable for the research that I'm doing, and hence I must read it in its entirety, right? Uh, so, uh, but people differ. Some they prefer to go in the library, take all the books, put them here, so that kind of. But there are easier ways of doing this. It should be a more focused approach. So use abstracts and conclusions from journal articles to check relevance. So remember, if you check the title, then the title have keywords that you are looking for. You can say, okay, let me look at the abstract. You read the abstract. It's also having those keywords. Then you can say, okay, let me read the conclusion. You can go to the conclusion and read, and are they still talking about the same thing? You can now you can read the introduction and conclusion together. Then after that you can decide whether should I really read the rest of this article. Keep notes of your reading along with clear records of bibliographic information and page numbers for your reference. So in most cases, sometimes we just read, but what we do is that we do not take note of the sources of the information that we are integrating into the text that we are reading. Then at a later stage, you are asked to say, okay, provide a citation for this. Then you don't have the citation at the end. It becomes a very tedious exercise where you have to now go back on the internet, try to look for that journal again so that you can harvest or you can pull the bibliographic information from that particular journal. Then you Okay, so ultimately, your objective should be to create a dialogue between the theories and ideas that you have read and your own thoughts, right? So remember, your own thoughts, your voice, your value addition that you are doing to, so that entails a dialogue between the theories, the ideas that you are having, and so on. What does others remember? We are not the first one possibly to just be looking at that particular aspect. But what have those who have already been in the field or who have researched on the topic? What are they saying? What did they not say? Then you find a gap that you are feeling. In fact, any research that is done, it should fill a particular gap. If it has been done, then why are you repeating it? So you don't have to repeat what has been done. So everything, there must be an element of originality and novelty that is associated to that. So ask yourself the following questions. What is your personal perspective on the topic? What evidence is there that supports your point of view? So when you talk of evidence, remember, for academic writing, is formal, it's evidence based. We that's where we use citations, references. When you cite, you are providing evidence that indeed there's someone else or there are others also within this field who have supported what I'm saying here, or the idea that I'm trying to express here. So is each text current or is it outdated? That is sort of contextual. It depends. If you are writing something that pertains maybe to, it's a historical, you're coming from a historical to a current, perspective, then you have to use sources that are older. But myself, I like ordering the sources in terms of, if it's a concept that I'm trying to, talk about and provide citations for. I come from a sort of a historical account to a present account. So I include sources, an older source, then I include maybe also another one, that is a bit average. Then I include also a recent, so as to see that this issue is an issue that has evolved over time or that have developed over time. So also ask yourself that what argument is the author making? It must be important that you understand what argument the author is making, and is the author biased, even in terms of the research orientation itself, the way that the research was designed, and so on. So you look for biasness. I might write about a particular aspect, but I feel good about that aspect. That even if I find something that is negative, then I will not talk about it. So that's biasness in research. It happens. We are human beings. We are also subject to emotions. So in some cases, biasness can also sort of crop in. So this is now the structure. We are moving on now to the structure of the proposal. So with any proposal, you must have a title page. The title page that lists the title of the study that you are doing. I usually use a yardstick of saying at least maybe if it's at most 13 to 14 words, right? So if you I think if you check there on the text that I'm having already, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 words, right? If you read this, okay, let's go on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You see, so it's already, if it's a title, it's already like long. So at least if you have 14 to 18 words, but you should not exceed. Maybe if at most you can end on 18. Then it must also be sort of descriptive, use action verbs, so that we know exactly, such studies with such titles, they are easy to find. Remember, this is a working title that you are having that might change over time, but you need this title. Usually, this is the title, or that becomes the title of your study, or the title that you are going to come up with for your study. It will be built upon this working title that you use within your abstract. And the title is linked to the topic, much linked to the topic. It has to sort of summarize what is it that you are doing. After reading the title, I must know that what is it that you are doing. That's why it's also important to include action verbs. Then also you need other, besides, when still talking of the qualities of a good title, it must link to the content of the proposal. Use of relevant what topics is also recommended. Issues of AI and so on. That is if your study is based on that. Don't just find any phrase, catchy phrase from what you might be thinking is a hot topic at that time, then you just include it within your study. Yet that was the focus of your study. So if there's no AI, don't mention AI. So it can also be funky, like maybe saying the size matter and analysis of tourism development, that kind of sort of a rhetorical kind of or a satirical kind of a title. So it could also be a question in a question format if you decide to do. So what is the impact of this on that? Then you put a question mark. So we have seen, I think, during over time when we are reading, we have seen such, right? Then but still on the qualities, the title must link to the content of the proposal. I think it was a repeated a slide, but I've already spoke about all these aspects. I can only add the issue of search engine optimization as well. That when we are searching for your article, it must be amongst the first one that pop up. Otherwise, if it's not designed with search engine optimization in mind, then you might find that your article will be far, far like further away, that when someone is looking for it, go on Google. It might be the maybe we just search maybe for first 10 articles or so, and then we stop. We don't go to like 50 pages on Google searching for articles. So that is very important, and you must have that in mind when you are also devising the title of your study, search engine optimization. Then you from the title, then the title page as well, it must contain your details, the details of the supervisor, the study that you are doing. So there's usually templates that are there. Even if you go in the repository under your faculty, you can see some other dissertations that have been written before, other research work that has been done by students who have passed it through the system. You can see the way that they also maybe the cover page is usually structured, but also the faculties, departments, they in some most cases they do have such under their resource packs. Then, within the introduction or background, you should provide a background and context to the topic and present the key issues of your proposed research. Remember, you must give us. You cannot just tell us that this variable affect this one, but you actually have to give some sort of a background for us to have an understanding of the topic. What is it that has been going on within that topic, and so on. So it must be really be very clear. So you give background to the start, usually from a broad perspective to a narrow research question, right? So you look at an issue, sort of broadly, but then you narrow it down to the question that you want to start. So the main message must be clear and concise. The readers should understand and be contextualized in the research and know which broad research field the start fits in terms of your research, philosophical orientation, research paradigms, and so on. So the reader must also have a clear idea of what is being studied. The relevance, importance, and purpose of the research must be apparent. Those must be very clear, including so remember these sections within the proposal, they actually speak to each other, they link, they are related to each other. So you might find that some aspects that you even say in the background and introduction part, it will also they will also be useful as well when you are now framing your problem, under the problem statement section. So within the problem, so from the introduction and background, you have to state the problem. This is just a sort of a standard definition of what a problem statement is. So we are saying it is a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be eliminated, or troubling question that exists in scholarly literature, in theory or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation, right? So, I think this definition just captures what the problem statement really entails in a manner that is actually, very understandable and, sort of self-explanatory. Then the purpose of the problem statement is to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. It also places the problem into a particular context that defines the parameters of what it is that is being investigated. Remember, you cannot do a study where you investigate everything. Right, so there must be a sort of a delineation of the start, or sort of a demarcation that these are the parameters. I'm starting from here and I end here, right? So it also provides the framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary to conduct the study, and explain how the findings will present this the information. So it is a it sort of a specific issue or gap that is existing, within extant literature or existing knowledge, and that you are actually aiming to address in your research, right? So that is, in other words, what a problem statement is, or what it entails. For qualitative studies, it's called a guiding question, guiding research question, and you have to pose that. So it's the research problem, or you can call it a guiding research question. That you have to pause, before you continue with your qualitative study. Then for quantitative, you can actually state a hypothesis instead, but you can also state the problem as well. But you can use it interchangeably with stating statement of a hypothesis. So the research question or hypothesis must make sense in the context of the presentation of the background and rationale of the problem. Remember, all facets, they are linked together, they are tied together for the whole, which is the whole PhD thesis that you are doing, or the whole master's dissertation that you are doing. Explain the problem, the extent of the problem, and possible solutions to that. Don't just give a problem. Remember, I think you have heard that saying that don't bring problems, but also offer solutions, isn't it? So here you state your problem, but then you also indicate how do you think that the problem should be resolved. So you also offer your you, you apply your mind in terms of the solution, how that problem can be resolved. Then we move on from the problem statement. We move on to a section for the theoretical foundation and literature review. So mostly for us, for social sciences, we have to sort of ground our study in theory. I don't know how many papers I've written that have gone out and then they are returned back because I didn't put a theory, or there's no theoretical establishment, for my study, or a theoretical foundation or theoretical basis for the study. So it's important, especially within social sciences, that you must provide the theoretical underpinning of your study. What is it that your study is anchored on, right? So you explain the theoretical perspective, the framework and foundation of the study. You further expand research goals and demonstrate knowledge of recent and prior authoritative literature locally and internationally. So you are showing that, okay, within this topic, there are these influential authors. So remember, for the research proposal, this is sort of a snapshot of the to just show us that, okay, I understand what is going on in the field, and I have the capacity to review literature, and also that these are the prominent figures maybe that they have written, and published the text that is sort of related or speak to the research that you are doing, whether supporting it or not supporting it. So it's a way for you also to demonstrate proficiency and ability to give an adequate report of preliminary research. And remember, literature review should be a literature review exercise. So don't write paragraphs about what you think, or offer your opinions, within this kind of a section. If you do that, it has to be very minimal, and we actually label it as your voice or your value addition to the existing conversation that is happening. But remember, when you say literature, literature means what has already been published. So which means that the focus is what has already been published. But with you being, sort of a judge of what those authors are saying, when you write in a conversation style like manner, where you see the literature review exercise as a conversation of authors within different fields, as speaking to the idea that you are expressing, right? Then the literature study should include definition of concepts, the theoretical foundation and empirical results from other study, and the theoretical foundation and empirical results from other studies. We also want to know what others found. Remember, the concepts. It's always remember there are certain words that are used in can have a different meaning when used in a particular setting or in a different setting. So that is you have to tell us that okay, within the you know um, for the purpose of this study, I define concepts as this, right? If you think that it has a sort of another connotation that you would want to really sort of look at it, from look at it from, right? So it should cover the main aspects or themes of the study. So you have to it's a like I said, it's a process. So you must sit down and establish what is it that the major themes about this topic that I'm going to look at. Then within the theoretical foundation and literary review, this is just some important tips. Establish the research intellectual context related to your topic. For example, theory, conceptual, and theoretical framework. It's very important to begin with that. So you want to try to say, okay, this is I subscribe to this school of thought or this kind of thinking or to these ideologies or philosophies, paradigms, worldviews. So you you can also, like I've said before, you can trace the history of the development of your topic. I like that, but it doesn't mean that now when we say you can develop a sort of historical account, then you are now going to dwell in history and just now writing history, over and over. It's just very, very briefly and transitioning to the current, but a snapshot that can give one an idea of where are you really coming from. So the also indicate the latest research or thinking or developments in your topic, current issues studied and current practice. And I just said both the history and the current, then those two can actually be amalgamated or, sort of combined so that at least you can come with something that is really solid and meaningful. Remember, when you combine two things, two is always better. So when you combine two things, then it will become the outcome is a hybrid outcome. So which means it shares both, from it could be merits from both, then it's more acceptable than maybe if you just use one method. Then discuss conflicting arguments and detect gaps in present knowledge. So you, like I said, you are the judge, you are the one who is refereeing this conversation. So you also tell us what you think. It should be a critical kind of an exercise, but approach, everything must be approached from a critical perspective, adding value where necessary for you to add value. Then check the essential issues of your research problem. Check that the essential issues of your research problem are introduced through the analysis of the literature. You still have a question that you want to seek answers to. So stick to that particular question. Make sure that everything that you are doing at the end of the day speaks to that question that you want to answer at the end, or the objectives that you want to reach by undertaking that study. Then we move from there. We move to the research questions and objectives. Right. We move to, but in some cases, after this theoretical foundation, um, sort of you can provide a motivation as well. The motivation can also be put after the problem statement, where you just motivate to establish the importance of your topic. Why is it important? What motivates you for you to think of doing that? What is it that has driven you? We don't in research, in academics, we don't say you just do something by chance. You don't do it by chance. You have to there must be some kind of motivation that have pushed you, or some factors that have induced you to take that course of direction, of to think in that manner. So okay, so under the research questions, you have the main overarching question your research seeks to answer. So that is that main research question. So sometimes I call it the primary research question. Then it is also optional how many research questions or subsequent study objectives that you choose for your study. So you can decide how many questions you would want to ask. But remember, if there are too many now, also even the reader will be confused now within, will get lost in the text. So you have to consider that as well. But I've seen maybe 3, 4, 5 questions being asked, but I'm not saying there's a limited number that you must use. This is the lower limit, this is the upper limit, but you have to be something that you have to think about. Then for quantitative studies, they can use hypotheses in alternative to research questions. So you can state a hypothesis there. They can be divided into primary, overall, and secondary questions as well. Remember, primary, that which you really wanted to do. Then the secondary, this is like a byproduct. In you, if you want to make fresh milk, you end up with cheese. But the idea was not the intention, or the purpose of the whole exercise was not to make cheese. It was to make fresh milk. But cheese is a byproduct. So at the end, we also end up having cheese as another product, right? So I see the secondary questions or secondary objectives as sort of the byproducts of the primary. And the two, you can frame objectives from research questions as well, or you can frame questions from objectives. Stepping stones to achieve your aim. The research that is the research questions. There's also primary, theoretical, and empirical objectives. So you can also distinguish them according uh, to the nature, and the category that they fit in terms of research text. So we can see the primary, ensure that the primary objective links to the title of the study. So usually this speaks straight to the topic. So you must make sure it links to the title of the study. Then we have theoretical objectives that you want to achieve via literature review processes, right? Then we have empirical objectives, which are objectives that you want to achieve via the data or statistical review process. Research design, you must ensure that the research methodology is coherent and consistent with the research paradigm within which the research is grounded. So don't talk of if it's a quantitative research design, then the methods that you have to be following or listing there, they have to speak to quantitative research. Not to say this is a quantitative research, but then you start in terms of the research design, you start mentioning or referring to those sort of research aspects or tools that are considered under a qualitative kind of a research. So you should make sure that the research methodology provides a clear structure of the research and the methods that will be used in the study. The research approach, design, and method, you establish the kind of research required to fulfill the objectives of the study. All this exercise is done in reference to your topic, the objectives that you want to fulfill, and the research questions, the problem. So like I said, everything is just like intertwined. It just speaks to the quality of the whole um, output that you are going to come up with. So you also look at the conceptual approach or strategy to the research that will address the research question or hypothesis optimally, whether you're going to use a non-empirical, sort of theoretical, philosophical, conceptual analysis, content analysis, documentary analysis, or an empirical, uh, sort of a approach, which is a survey-based based kind of way. You have to analyze, then you provide empirical results. Then establish the research design that will answer the research question or validate or falsify the hypothesis the best. So some research designs have assumptions that that they are linked to some research methods, some research approaches, you have assumptions that you have to fulfill first. It could be the structure of the data and so on. You can look at maybe sort of, let's say it's a time series. You are using time series methods. There are issues that have to be addressed in terms of the stationarity of the variables. You need to root test so that you have to make sure that all those assumptions are satisfied first before you make use of that method. Otherwise, if you do that, then you are going to get spurious results, right? Nonsensical results. That's what they term it in statistics. So describe the context of the qualitative research design or the context of the qualitative research design or the quantitative research design. Whether is the study, is it mainly qualitative, is it quantitative, is it a mixed method approach which combines both the qualitative and quantitative? If qualitative design, which qualitative method is applied? You can look at example for case study, whether it's a case study, is it grounded theory, is it a phenomenological study, is it ethnography, and so on. Then, if the quantitative design, which quantitative method is applied, whether it's an experimental method or a quasi-experimental method, a cross-sectional or a longitudinal, kind of a design, and you must know when we say cross-sectional data, what it means. When it's a longitudinal data, what does that also entail to? So when we talk of experimental methods, we are referring to research designs in which the researcher explicitly and intentionally induces exogenous variation in the intervention assignment to facilitate causal inference. So we are saying this causes that. So we have variables that are dependent and others that that can vary with time or which are exogenous, or or independent variables, that we must vary so that their impact is reflected on the dependent variable, right? Then, if we talk of a true experiment, when we talk of experimental methods, when we have a true experimental, we also call it a quasi-experimental design, which aims to establish a cause and effect relationship between an independent and dependent dependent variable. But that, unlike a true experiment, if it's a quasi-experiment, it does not rely on random assignment. Yet, in an experimental research design, you it's a, there's no the assignment is it's a random assignment. So you assign, the study units to the either the treatment or the and the control or the treated categories based on a sort of in a random manner. All right, then we have when we talk of the longitudinal studies and cross-sectional studies, we will see these as two different types of a research design, where in a cross-sectional study, you collect data from a population at a specific point in time, right? So if you are collecting the data maybe during maybe second semester, then you collect it at that point, sort of a point in time. So maybe it can be you can collect it this year, then you can collect it again maybe uh, another year, but at that point, same point, sort of in time. Then if the longitudinal study, you repeatedly collect data from the same sample over an extended period of time, like maybe when you are measuring exports, maybe daily exports. So every day over a longer period of time, you are doing that. So this differs from when it's a qualitative study, because you cannot have a longitudinal study when you collect qualitative data. Because when you collect qualitative data, you just collect it at this point in time, right? So when it's cross-sectional, then it's different. The time can vary, but you collect it at a certain sort of a same point across. the time variation. Then we move on to data collection techniques or methods. So the methodological approach will determine the data collection techniques that are used, right? If you are following a quantitative, then you have to use quantitative data collection techniques. If it's a qualitative, then you have to use qualitative data collection techniques. So here we are looking at, we have primary sources that are, for example, interviews, participatory action, research, field research focus groups, observations, and so on. Recruitment of participants is very important, and the process of obtaining informed consent as well, very important. Then the data collection in terms of the framework, sample size, and questionnaire is also very very important. If your questionnaire is wrong, then you are going to also get wrong information, and at the end you end up with results that are misleading. Then if we also have secondary sources like legislation, journals, internet sources, documentary sources, books, official documents, conference papers, newspapers. You can, so we call these secondary sources. And also on the secondary sources, you can also have other databases like maybe the World Bank, World Integrated Trading Solutions. We also have IMF has quite a number. We have the uh, ITC, International Trade Center, that also have trade data, for example. So it's important for you to know the data sources, the econometric methods of analysis, and the model. And when you are choosing, remember we said everything must speak to the topic and whether which kind of design best suits the study that you are doing or can best answer the questions that the research questions that you are posing. Then we also you have to consider ethical issues. So issues such as uh, gaining permission to conduct the study at a particular organization, ensuring that participation is voluntary and anonymous, and protecting the confidentiality of the information provided by the respondents. There's a lot of ethical, you know, uh, sort of concerns that you have to take into consideration. If there's harm, then how are you going to ensure that you mitigate against that, and so on. So we'll talk a bit also about the ethical, that every study it has to be submitted for ethical review, within the university. So you must identify any potential or existing ethical constraint and propose a solution strategy. Ethical constraints should be identified in terms of quality of the research ethics, integrate protection of data, and the respondents as well. That's why we have to anonymize our participants. We come up with pseudonyms A, B, C, D, so that we are not able to identify who the participants were, and also the way that the data from the participants will be stored. Remember, when you say the data, including their details as well, that you would have collected in some instances. Then for those who are doing PhD, it's important that you must have a research contribution. But even if you are doing masters as well, the research contribution is just important. This shows that what you are doing is original. No one has done that before. Okay, so we call it. So within this, we need significance or implications or expected outcome. They must also be part of this. So what is it that is new that you are doing? What are you contributing to the existing debate? What are you contributing to the existing literature? If you are not making a contribution, then so why should we why are you doing the study if there's no contribution that you are making? So you explain the unique contribution of the study. So this section is very significant for PhD. It must be explicit that this study makes a contribution in 1, 2, 3, 4. It makes these contributions. Then you have to sort of explicitly state those contributions. Reiterate what you are hoping to demonstrate. State how your research could contribute to debates in your particular subject area, perhaps filling a gap or gaps in existing works, which is the essence of research. You can also be asked to have a research plan where you know you have to present your timeline for completing the dissertation or the thesis or the study. So you provide an outline of the schedule and anticipated progress towards completing the study. The timeline can be presented using other formats. You can do it in bullet points, table, you can use the Gantt chart. If you go on the internet, you'll see, even on Excel, I think the Gantt chart is there. So you can to say within the time frame, I should have done this. Within this time frame, I should have achieved this. Make sure that the plan that you are putting forward is realistic. You must set goals that are realistic. Don't say, I'm going to finish doing the literature review in one day, but you know that you cannot do the literature review and finish it in one day. You should also demonstrate awareness of the various elements of the study, such as literature research, empirical work, and also the writing part of it. Right, then the research outline or chapter classification, where you outline the structure of the chapters and provide a summary of the expected contents of each chapter. Usually, I do it in paragraph form. I don't just list in bullets to say chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but I explain to say, okay, in chapter 1, this is what I've done. Then in chapter 2, I'm doing this. In chapter 3, then I'm presenting my research method. It will consist of this, that kind of it must be a bit descriptive in other words. Then this is just sort of a suggested chapter layout. See it as a provisional table of contents for your research. So that gives sort of a framework that you are going to be working on, or just sort of a foundation. It gives a structure to what you want to do, from the beginning until the end. Remember, your study will consist of chapters. So this is sort of the structure of the entire study, which also speaks to coherence already. You are already establishing the logical flow of your work, right? You didn't start by concluding, then you end with introduction. So that arrangement on its own is a logical flow of the work. Then all the contents within those chapters, then they also have to link. So is the chapters linking as well, right? So the sequence is a way of ensuring coherence as well. Then, so this is just a generic layout, introduction and background to the study in chapter 1, chapter 2, literature review. So for PhD studies, you can have more than one literature chapter. So you can have another chapter and so on. So you're not limited for doing that. Even in masters, you can also have, depending, some they make the theoretical framework a chapter, some they have a conceptual framework. Then they also have I had application literature review and theoretical literature review. So you can have more than one, including the in terms of chapter 3, the research design as well. You can have a mixed method approach where you you have the quantitative method as a chapter, then you can have the qualitative method as another chapter. Yeah, or you can have them as sections within chapter 3. Then chapter 4, the results and findings as well. You find that it can be a chapter on its own. You can combine the results, presentation of results, and discussions together. But most cases, I've seen a distinction between the two, having a chapter just dedicated to the presentation of results, then another chapter dedicated to the discussion of those results, where now these important elements like triangulation are also done. Right, then the conclusions and recommendations chapter, others will develop a framework, then they will have a chapter where they are presenting that framework after that is done after the results. Then the issue of referencing and technical requirements, you have to reference. Remember, referencing is very important, for you to avoid plagiarism. Ideas that are not your own, you must acknowledge that these ideas were not my own. Then you have to reference both in text, and where every in-text reference must have a corresponding list in the bibliograph or in the reference list. And also the distinction between bibliograph and references. There's a difference between the two, where when it's in a reference list, You only include those in text citations, all those sources that you have cited in text. If you did not cite it, then you don't include it in the reference list. But for a bibliograph, you can also even include those sources that you referred to, but you did not make use of them or cite them in the text, including some bibliographical notes as well. You can provide. You must look for text. If a person have done it correctly, you must look for text with the bibliograph and text with the reference list, and you can see the difference between the two. But a lot of people use the two interchangeably. They can just say bibliograph, but it's not really a bibliograph. Then you must note the school's technical requirements for source references. That is the referencing style and guide, usually, which is the UJ UJ Harvard. If you go online, you can find it. With the UJ Harvard, so which is sort of a manipulated form of um, of the original Harvard. Then the technical requirements, numbering, usually you have to say one, not one with a full stop, and if it's sectioning 1.1, not 1.1 with a full stop. But sometimes these are things that no one really is consider much, but this is how we're supposed to do it. Then the layout, use Arial 11. Um, if you use Arial, then the size should be 11, spacing 1.5, and 12 points paragraph spacing, right? So these are sort of I've used this, and it works. Every submission that I make, be it to a journal, I follow this kind of a of a of a of a structure, or in terms of the formatting of the template of the text. I follow this, and I've never had encountered any problem. And this also works across even universities as well. Where if you use Arial, then this is the font size that you must use. Then differ from when you use Times New Roman, which is also a good font style. Then you use Arial 12, but the spacing of paragraph and line spacing is also the same. Then in text within the introduction, board, and so on, it must be justified. But only the within the reference list, you don't have to justify. It must be left aligned. Then heading levels, heading level 1 for chapters, right? So this is the way that they should be the sort of structured. So 1, which is for headings. So chapter 1, chapter 2, these are chapter headings. Then there must be, I use 14 points. Why? Because I don't want the text to be the same, the heading to be the same size as the text. So when I use 12, area 12, Times New Roman 12, for example, then I use a heading size for the heading. I can put it at 14, and it must be capitalized. Then I use 14 across. So when it's a subheading under the chapter, then it's a small letter bold, 14 points, lowercase, right? When it's a subheading under that, which is the third level, 1.1.1, small letter only, but not bold, but 14 points, right? When it's a subheading under that, which is now level 4, 1.1.1.1, then not bold, it's small letters, not bold, and you must put them in italics. For those who want to continue going, 1.1.1.1, it now starts beginning to sound monotonous, and at the same time, you also run out of the way in which to format it. So myself, what I do, if I go to 1.1.1.1.1, which is the fifth level, I just normally reduce its font size by 1, but it will be small letter italics. Then I reduce the font size by 1 notch below. So which means from there I move to 13. Then if you have another one, you move to 12. Going like that. But you are not. It's not encouraged. It's not recommended that when for you to exceed to maximum maybe 5 levels. Don't exceed 5. But I try as much as possible not even to reach 5 levels. So that means that that text or those elements that you feel like that they are sections, you can group them together so that they are not. You come up with a sort of a more generalizable theme where they can all fit, and then you discuss them under that fit as speaking to the topic that you are studying. Then when listing, please use bullet form and do not number paragraphs, only headings. All tables and figures should be numbered and give a heading, so a caption, a sort of a title, right? Then remember to give credit to the original authors from which the table or figure was adapted if you have modified it. If you have, you must seek permission when you use figures and tables from other authors. Then references in the text, the author date citation, Monyera 2018, Monyera et al. 2018, then the placement of this, whether at the end of the paragraph or when you start with it, according to Monyera 2018, when it's at the end of the sentence, then Monyera 2018 in brackets, Monyera, comma 2018 in brackets. Bibliographical particulars are arranged in alphabetically, no numbering and no categories. For example, you have to categorize to say books, journals, and so on. Then that must be done according to the referencing styles. We have talked about bibliography and referencing already. Then follow the referencing guide. Failure to follow the referencing guide, it's considered ignorance, and in most cases, you will end up not citing properly, right? Then that can be looked at. This also, when your work is being assessed, there are marks for that. There are points that you score for just following a clear format. So why should you lose out? Yet it's just following the proper procedures that are supposed to be followed. Then check your proposal for the following. This is just a note. Have you shown that your research idea is ethical? Is it relevant? Is it feasible within the time frame and resources available? That's what this happens after writing. So have you identified a clear research gap or focus, stated why your study is important, selected the methodology that will enable you to gather the data that you need? So this is some form of like a checklist, and some faculties, they actually provide a checklist that you have to tick before you submit, to in terms of whether all these elements have they been completed and have you done justice to them. So this is the submission procedure, which is sort of a generic procedure that is followed here at the UJ. So it's important that you also talk to the departments within the JPS and the JPS as a faculty as well, in terms of the processes that they also follow that might not be captured here. So there is an initial review first that is done at departmental level, where your proposal is checked possibly for completeness, and it's initially reviewed at departmental level. So the step often involves feedback from your supervisor and possibly a departmental review committee also that can sit. So that's where you see some they do a colloquium at JBS. They do colloquiums, so where you can come and maybe sort of present orally to the departmental review proposal review committee. Then in some okay, well, I've already talked about the colloquium. That is, you are required to come and present orally during a departmental colloquium before a written submission. So you get feedback as well from that, and you go and further. That will be aimed at further enhancing the study that you are doing, or your proposal that you are putting, that would have put together. Then in terms of the submission as well, there's a faculty higher degree commit, submission, where this is the documentation that is normally required. So you see that after the departmental approval, you have to submit the signed proposal to the faculty higher degree committee. So you have to fill a form, the HDC one registration form for postgraduate studies, that you have to complete to accompany your proposal. A report from a statistician, sometimes it might also be required by the higher degrees committee. That is for just in cases where maybe the methods, someone has to see the statistical, if you are doing a statistical, applying statistical techniques to analyze your data as part of your research design and methodology, then you have to, there might be a need of a statistician to verify and that really did work. a report might be required in that instance. Ensure all required documents, including any necessary ethics approval, are also included. That is for the faculty higher degrees commit. And for approval, you must be mindful of submission deadlines within your faculty to avoid delays in your research research timeline. Then there is also a need for ethics approval. Usually, even if your study is quantitative and purely quantitative, like maybe you are using secondary data without any contact with the nature, with humans, with animals, you just have to also get an ethical clearance for that. Though the form that you can use, there's a very short form maybe for that you can be that you have to just state that the study does not involve interaction with humans and so on. But if it does, then you have to see you have to get the clearance. So it has to be reviewed by the ethics committee. Then after the ethics committee review that, then they can issue sort of an approval, an ethics approval, that you can now be able to conduct the study. You should not conduct the study before an ethical clearance has been issued. Submit the completed ethics application form along with your research proposal and any required appendices to the designated ethics committee conduct. These are just my concluding remarks, or I call them council remarks as well. Writing, it's a process, it's not an event, it happens over time. So it's a process that unfolds over time, a repetitive process in some cases. You must follow the prescribed writing conventions. Remember, if you really you violate grammatical rules, you violate spelling rules, and so on, then the clarity of your work, the the conciseness of your work, the precision of your work becomes affected. Then it is a well conceptualized research proposal guarantees the success of your research in terms of completion, the ultimate completion. Then the process, when you are doing writing, it's a slow process, but one that should be sure. Why do I say it's a slow process? You should not just rush in write the proposal in one day. It's a gradual process where you have to apply your mind and think, uh, you know, uh, not just to collect information, and at the end, maybe you might even end up plagiarizing if you want to do it at a very high pace. Then there's the issue of self-academic discipline, which is important. So sometimes I say you do not fail, but you fail to submit. You do not finish. So there's no assessment that you have failed, but you didn't submit. Always a good practice to good to practice a good academic ethical conduct, and also plagiarism. Be reminded it's a academic fraud and a criminal offense in academic spheres. Then follow the prescribed proposal formats and submission procedures of your respective departments and faculty. Some sources that I used when I was compiling this presentation. Mr. Hassani, I hand over to you so that you can lead us into the open discussion session. Mr. Hassan, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Doc, how are you? Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you so much, Doc, for the very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. Apologies for that. I just had somebody else assisting. Thank you so much for the insightful presentation, and thank you for giving us the guidelines and tips as you have mentioned in the beginning that there's a sort of like guidelines and tips for proposal writing for the participants. So I'm sure the participants will definitely have taken a thing or two on how to craft or rather to compile proposal writing going forward in their research or dissertation thesis. I don't know if there's any questions from the participants, Laurent, Palisa, Dini. I don't know if you guys have questions, then we can make this just an interactive session. You can pose your questions, you can type in the chat box, you can unmute your mic, then we can interact. We can definitely interact. I have enabled everybody's mic. So if you feel like there's something that is not clear, please do address it with Dr. Gabriel, then yeah, he'll definitely be able to assist you with your questions. Thank you.
Lawrence, whilst we are waiting for questions, that do me I see it says not take could it be that the could it be that the not taker joined whilst do me doesn't know, or what is it that is happening?
I'm not sure because I think you can actually, you can actually do what you call assign a note taker to come and take notes for you while you're not in the session. I think, yeah.
Okay,
I think
all right.
it's actually possible because I've seen sometimes we do have note takers taking notes on behalf of the person, but it's not
Okay,
available in the chat. But yeah, they do actually take notes for the person. Yeah.
okay. So in other words, this is a participant.
Yeah, it's more of a participant, but an AI participant, sort of like a robot participant. Yeah. Just also
Okay.
to the participants that are here, I fill in the I've sent the evaluation form, the feedback survey. So please kindly ask you to please fill it in. Also, this ensures that you will get a certificate of attendance by filling in the feedback survey in the chat session. I don't know if there is any questions, but I see that Deborah, I see your presentation is very clear. So I believe the participants were very clear and it was very concise and very straight to the point. So if there isn't any questions from the participants, I don't know if there's any questions before we can end the session. We'll ensure that we also share the workshop recording and the presentation slides to the participants so that you can get it the access at your free time. If you feel like there's something that you didn't get well, you can always go back and reflect on the recording and you can always look at the presentation slides there. I don't know if there's anything extra that you would like to add there, Dr. Gabriel.
From my side, Lawrence, I just thank the participants who took their time to be with us and to listen to me, in this session. Thank you so much for continuing to support the Research Capacity Development Unit. And I think I give you the green light to conclude this session if there's no
Oh,
any other further questions.
okay. Thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel. And thank you so much to the participants who made it today, even though we had a very low attendance. But thank you so much for availing yourself. And we have also recorded the session. And I believe most students are busy with their exams now. So it might be a time where maybe most of students might be busy with their exams. That's why we might have a low attendance. But as long as we have made this session recorded, and we'll make it available on our model communities together with the presentation slides. And thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel, for presenting. And thank you so much to all the attendees who joined us today. In that regard, I will be closing the session. And please also not to please don't forget to fill in the feedback survey that I also shared in the chat session. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you. I'll now be ending the session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.